What should be his value now on the open market with all these job openings? Why don't you take this one
it's
first,
hard
Pete?
for me not to look at this and say he tanked this because he wanted out. He said, you know what, Jeffrey Lurie, let me out of here. This is not going to work out. It's a toxic relationship all the way around, from my locker room to my general manager.
Wow.
And he said,
I mean, the guy's got a statue outside the stadium. You think he would be that cavalier?
I think it's an untenable situation.
Okay, go ahead.
As much as we talk about Doug Pederson, we also can't look past Howie Roseman, who is now, if he keeps his job, going to be hiring his third head coach. Now, let's just have a brief history here. He was with Andy Reid back in 2010. That's when he was hired. He did not, even though he had a general manager title, he did not have personnel authority.
Yep.
Andy Reid had that authority because he had been there for so long. After they moved on from Andy Reid, after his third season, this is Howie Roseman's third season, they hired Chip Kelly. He was the general manager until Chip Kelly said, I want personnel decisions. And so he moved to the VP of football operations. Eventually, he was kind of out of the organization for like half of a season. Then they fired Chip Kelly, inserted Pat Shurmur as the assistant. He took over personnel decisions again. And then they obviously moved on and hired Doug Pederson. And now they're firing Doug Pederson. And Howie Roseman has had personnel decisions over that point, even though it seems like there was a little bit of an influence the other way. And we know what happened this year. And that's what's most important, PT. In the second round of the 2020 draft, they drafted Jalen Hurts. And it was confounding to everyone who could imagine the dynamics of a locker room, especially a quarterback meeting room, with a guy you just paid $128 million in an extension. And it never got better. Now, to move off of Howie Roseman and then back to Doug Pederson, he never managed this the right way. And you could see it from the very beginning of the season, BT. There were questions about, well, what role does Jalen Hurts have? He never answered it. Right, he just kind of let it sit in limbo. And I get it. It was a pandemic season, training camp and OTAs and all that stuff were all disjointed and jacked up. But you had to have some sort of plan, right? You don't just, and if there wasn't a plan, that means that you weren't on the same page as your general manager. And so as the season went on, it got worse and worse and worse because the guy you paid $128 million started paying like he deserved to be on a fifth round draft pick, first round contract. He played that poorly to the point that he got benched. And the whole time, Doug Pederson just kind of, didn't answer the questions. And he didn't, not at least not to anybody's satisfaction, and not the least of which was his team. And there's no. When you stop and look back at it, there really isn't a question on why they underperformed. It's because there was chaos up top. And when there's chaos up top, that's why I went through that whole story.
Understood.
When there's chaos up top, it always trickles down to the field. Always.
Yeah.
Always.
I think you lay that out well, but I think it's important to go through those steps there. It's getting better, but also last couple of years, this division's been a train wreck.
Yep.
So there's been this massive element of underachievement and confusion in arguably, or maybe you would even say inarguably, now the AFC East has resuscitated itself after a 20-year coma outside of the Pats. You can say that it's inarguably, or was inarguably, the worst division of football, and they still couldn't distinguish themselves. It's weird because anytime you win a Super Bowl, you've got to dole out the proper props. Can a 16 team beat a 1? Yeah, I think anything can happen, as we saw with UMBC and Virginia. You don't stumble your way to a Super Bowl.
No.
You just don't. You don't backdoor your way to a Super Bowl win. You might circumstantially, if the conference is really down and the team you're playing in the divisional round, their star is hurt. Like, there could be circumstances maybe why you can maybe stumble into the Super Bowl. You ain't winning the Super Bowl if you're not doing some stuff right. So we have to make sure that we give him a lot of props. But
no doubt,
once you get past that, now you got to look at the facts. You say, okay, well, without, not only Frank Reich, but without DeFilippo, you have had Carson Wentz go from a top 5 quarterback, basically someone who's going to win the MVP, to literally and statistically the worst quarterback in football.
Yeah.
That's number one. Number two.
It's almost hard to do, man.
It's hard to do. It's almost even hard to even fathom. Doing is one thing. It's hard to even fathom.
That's right.
Like, how could that happen? So that under your watch, without the assistance and tutelage of Reich and DeFilippo, you went from that amazing that almost everybody was jealous of outside of 2 or 3 teams to the guy is a train wreck and he's the worst quarterback in football. You may have lost the locker room, okay? Mm-hmm. I know we've heard conflicting reports, but what went down, you certainly didn't gain respect around the league, that's for sure. And the young quarterback, whether you wanted him or you didn't, the way you failed to empower him after so many good moments, you were so weak in asserting any sort of confidence toward him that he deserves to be fired. Like, yeah. I've said this for 2 weeks now, that he deserves to, maybe more, that he deserves to be fired. I'm not, he earned this pink slip, yeah. All right? But the question now becomes, there's two. What should Philly do? Mm-hmm. And how appealing is Doug Pederson on the open market? A lot of teams are looking for jobs, Deke.
Yeah, well, I mean, a lot of teams looking for coaches. Yeah, for coaches. I think that, I think there was a mistake that was made it's a simple one, but it's a very pertinent one when you think about quarterbacks and when your team is built around your quarterback. And once you pay a guy, this is the same problem that the Houston Texans are going to have, because they paid Deshaun Watson so much money. The team is now built around the quarterback. Same thing with the Kansas City Chiefs. Ultimately it'll be that way with Josh Allen once he gets paid, maybe even this offseason. Like once you pay the quarterback, you have to build around that quarterback. But then you go and you undermine him by drafting a really good college player in Jalen Hurts, and then you overcoach him. Like Marty Morningway, Rick Scarangiello, who came in as offensive assistants, in addition to his quarterback coach, in addition to Doug Pederson, who was the de facto offensive coordinator and head coach. There's too many voices in Carson Wentz's head, and you wonder why he faltered so much. And so that's mismanagement, right? It's hiring for the sake of hiring. And so I think that's a lesson that Doug Pederson learned, and he'll know not to do it again. Can he immediately rebound and become a head coach? I'm going to say no, and I don't think he should, BT. Mm-hmm. I think there's a lot of baggage right now hanging around Doug Pederson, and we have this conversation often. Sometimes you just need a year off. Yep. To me, it feels like Doug Pederson is the kind of coach right now who probably didn't expect this year to go as awry as it did. Mm-hmm. And there's no way he has the answers, right? And so to go just try to do it again someplace else, I think would be akin to Rex Ryan leaving the Jets and going to the Bills immediately. You know what I mean? It doesn't always work out when you think, let me just get to the next place. Yep. It doesn't always work out.
I fundamentally agree with that. It happened with Adam Gase as well.
That's right.
The word in Miami was, and it was refuted by some, but didn't get along with certain players, like Landry. Some other guys were shipped out, blah, blah, blah. So he went right from getting fired in Miami after, quite frankly, like he did. I mean, what he did in Miami was like winning 2 Super Bowls compared to what he did for my team. But he really didn't do what he was hired to do in Miami. Tannehill got hurt. There was an element of underachievement. They never really popped. Okay. But there were things that Gase needed to fix. What happened? He gets a job immediately. So there's no self-awareness. There's no looking in the mirror. There's no, moment of clarity where you say, maybe to yourself, but you at least recognize, maybe I've got to change a few things about myself.
That's right.
To make myself more appealing to my next employer. That never happened. Look at what happened with him. Now, that doesn't mean that with the Jets. Doesn't mean that Pederson is necessarily destined for the same exact fate. But look at Mike. Just because you take a year off doesn't always work either. Look at Mike McCarthy.
Yeah, it's true.
Mike McCarthy took a year off. All we heard was for a whole year, he's scouring film. He's going to modernize things. He's getting his staff ready. He's in the laboratory. He came out. Mike McCarthy looked like he hadn't coached a game in 10 years.
True, but he also kept a few of that staff from the Hangovers, and that's the Hangover staff from Jason Garrett's era.
Yeah, true. Kellen Moore, a few of them. I got you. But the point is,
I agree with you.
You never really know.
You don't know. But this one feels. I don't know, man. There's a
toxic,
not
semi
toxic, but it's like he was damaged. I'm not talking about reputationally, but it's just like in his mind, he never was clear. Like you couldn't get clear answers out of him. And for a guy who won a Super Bowl and 3 seasons ago, we're like, man, Doug Pederson is the blanking man, right? Look what he did. You had your MVP playing quarterback go down, and you stick in Nick Foles and you win a Super Bowl. Mm-hmm. Doug, you are the man, dude. You got a job for life. And then just like that,
statue.
I know. And
got a statue.
And just like that, it's
rip
over
it down,
and you're fired. And not in like a yeah, let's just about time. We've been here for a while. Let's mutually agree to. That's not how it was.
No.
It was like, dude, we can't stand you. You lost the locker room. You've been inexplicable with some of your decisions, and we don't trust you with your plan going forward. See ya. It's just stunning how quickly it flipped for Doug Pederson.
It's as swift of a demise, and I'll put quotes around the word demise, not personal demise, but coaching demise. As swift and as shocking of a demise, I think, pertaining to NFL head coaches, that I can never recall.
Yeah.
Honestly.
Yeah.
Because
you're not going to find someone who won a Super Bowl and 2 years later is like out.
Correct. Now, if you achieve success, maybe like Parcells wanted to bounce around. He had that transient existence. Maybe you have a little, you butt heads with ownership. You want more money. You want more power. Not that basically you lost control.
Yeah.
Like that's what happened. I want to read something for you. This is important because there's a lot of teams out there. And I know that he's going to be connected to my team because of his relationship with Joe Douglas. But now this is only one, I want to read something for you that I reached out to my buddy who's a great at season tickets, born and raised in Philly, an athlete, played college ball, played AAU ball with Catino Mobley. Not that I need to drop the kid's resume, but I say that because he knows sports. Trust me. And I said, give me your most honest assessment of Pederson. I'm going to read it on my show.
And this is from a Philly perspective.
No, as good and informed and a passionate, yes. He says, all right, down on his leadership. Don't think he's tough enough. Players like him for the most part, except Wentz, but I think he lost some respect in the locker room. Seems lost half the time seeing what's right in front of him. Not great adjustments. Doesn't commit to the run enough, even when it's clear they are they're much more successful when doing so. Especially when the O-line was backups and Wentz was a joke throwing the ball. Offense became stale, predictable, boring, and terrible. To be fair, tons of injuries, but they were regressing each year since the Super Bowl, Wentz included. In-game decisions highly questionable and downright awful sometimes. Wentz went from a top 5 player with Reich and DiFilippo to a bottom player, if not the worst now. Would never hire him to develop Darnold or any other quarterback who needs a jump start without a legit OC with pull and a good quarterbacks coach. Players didn't develop at all. Much of that is bad drafting, puts Roseman in parentheses, as you said, should be gone as well, but does it absolve the staff and him? That is about, on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 would be higher and one would be run away. That's about a 3.5.
Yeah, run away.
Like, that's not somebody that you want to run. If your team gets Doug Pederson, just remember those words.
Yeah.
Watch, it's going to be my team. Watch. It's going to be my team.
I hope not for your sake, BT.
I don't want him.
But here's the
I don't want Doug
Pederson. Now, Doug Pederson, we know what happened. We saw it. We saw it happening in real time. We were like, dude, you're trying to get fired with some of the things that you're doing and saying, and then ultimately the last game, we all know it went down. But what happens to the Philadelphia Eagles right now is the other question.
I got my answer
because you have this. I mean, let's call it what it is. This is a quarterback controversy in Philly right now. Yes, you could move away from Carson Wentz. You can trade him, but you got to wait until after the draft. It's not until June. I mean, if you want to take that huge $34 million hit and do it before June, fine, but you're hamstringing yourself significantly. Now, maybe you get away with that because Jalen Hurts is on a rookie contract, a second-rounder rookie contract, so you just suck it up and say, we got, $34.5 million because he's probably only making $500,000 on our quarterback. But are you really sold on Jalen Hurts being your guy? He looked good at times, but really horrendous others, trying to throw the football. The Eagles are in – I mean, they're almost in purgatory right now.
I'd hire Eric Bieniemy.
But they're in purgatory.
I would hire Bieniemy.
The talent's not there. Maybe they got some young players, but they could have drafted Justin Jefferson. Instead, they took Rager. They could have drafted DK Metcalf a couple years ago. Instead, they took JJ Arcega-Whiteside. Right? You look at the trust in building the right kind of team. I just don't know if it's there. There are much more. There's so many question marks right now with the Philadelphia Eagles, more so than I think I had coming into this past season with the Giants and the Washington football team.
Which is why I don't know that they'll do this, and I know we're going to get into Bieniemy a little bit later. There's some thoughts that he might not get a chair at all in this coaching carousel. But this is a job that I think would be good for Eric Bieniemy.
How come?
Because this is there's a lack of talent. So
I don't know. I mean, it's the first time head coach walking into this mess. I mean,
I
BT,
understand.
what I just said is real. Like, they got to redo their offensive line. They got a quarterback controversy, like a serious one.
Yep.
They don't. Maybe they have the right talent, skill position wise.
See, I don't think they do, which is why I think they need more concepts. Which is why I would trust. I know he's not bringing Kelsey and Tyreek. You know what I mean? He would bring an innovation that could be a shortcut to a dearth of talent in certain spots.
Yeah.
I would take a chance on Bieniemy if I'm Philly.
Zach Ertz is also talking about he's done there. I mean, this is crazy what's happening in Philly.
It's bad.
It's an implosion. Like, I mean, this wasn't like someone coming and attacking from the outside. They did this to themselves.
Thanks for watching. Make sure you like and subscribe, and don't forget to hit that bell to be notified when we drop fresh content.